Hello everyone, and welcome back. Imagine, if you will, a small, quiet town nestled on the edges of the Pacific Northwest. A place where rain falls almost as reliably as the tide, and the sky is perpetually shrouded in a blanket of mist and clouds. The town of Oakville, Washington, in August of 1994 was just another sleepy dot on the map, its population a modest 600 people. The town was known for its weather, the kind of misty mornings and drizzly afternoons that feel like the world is wrapped in a soft, gray haze. Life there moved slowly. People knew each other by name, and, for the most part, the most excitement anyone expected on a typical day was the occasional town fair or an impromptu fishing contest on the nearby river. However, that all changed one summer morning. What happened in Oakville would defy logic, ignite wild theories, and become one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the Pacific Northwest. I'm Matt, and this is Matt's Mysteries. It was early, just after 3 a.m. on August the 7th, when the first signs of something strange began. At first, it seemed like just another regular, damp morning. The rain started falling, as usual, blanketing a 20 square mile area. Except, this time, it wasn't rain at all. No, what came down from the sky wasn't water, wasn't even a familiar fog. Instead, residents awoke to find something far stranger. Something incredibly odd, and somewhat terrifying. The sky, as it often did, was overcast. However, now it seemed to be spewing sheets of something gelatinous and translucent. This was no mist, no fog, no hail, nothing considered typical or even normal weather for the area. It was as if the heavens themselves had opened up to release a sticky, slimy substance, small blobs that fell in sheets, coating the ground in a sheen of translucent goo. It wasn't liquid in the usual sense. It didn't splash like water or puddle like rain. It was gelatinous, a translucent mass that seemed to defy nature itself. Imagine, if you will, walking out your door on a cool morning to find the streets blanketed with something that looked almost like the remnants of a strange, alien organism. Residents stepped into their yards, blinking in disbelief. It wasn't rain. It was a kind of goo. At first, people were confused, even intrigued. Local police officer David Lacey was on patrol at the time the storm started, and the mystery substance coated his vehicle and obscured his windshield.
We turned our windshield wipers on, and it just started smearing to the point where we could almost not see. And we both looked at each other and we said, "Geez, this isn't right. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, basically. And where did this come from?"
Stopping at a nearby gas station, Lacey donned latex gloves and proceeded to scrape the goo from his windshield, noting,
"The substance was very mushy. It's almost like if you had Jell-O in your hand and you could pretty much squish it through your fingers. We did have some bells go off in our heads that basically said that this isn't right. This isn't normal."
Nature, after all, is fairly unpredictable in the Pacific Northwest. The locals had seen their fair share of unusual weather phenomena. heavy fog, strange rains, even the occasional dust storm. Perhaps this was just another quirk of the environment. But then, the first signs of something far more sinister began to emerge. The blobs weren't just strange to look at, they were dangerous. People who came into contact with the goo began feeling the first waves of sickness. Some experienced intense nausea, dizziness, shortness of breath, and the sort of fatigue that makes the simplest tasks feel impossible. It wasn't like the usual seasonal flu or a cold that you could shake off with a cup of tea and some rest. No, this was something else, something that struck hard and very fast. Soon, even the animals in town began showing symptoms. Cats, dogs, even horses and cattle began falling violently ill. The livestock, the pets, the very animals that Oakville's residents had known their entire lives, each one was affected in the exact same way. Some even passed away from their symptoms. Something was clearly not right. Whatever had fallen from the sky wasn't just some freak weather event. It wasn't just an oddity. It was a crisis. And I think I speak for most when I say, crisis indeed. Don't hurt the animals, people, or you'll make my list. Anyway, among the first to be affected was Dottie Hearn, a local woman who had stepped outside after the storm had ended when she came into contact with the strange substance. She initially believed the substance to be hailstones. However, on closer inspection, she noticed that it was gelatinous in nature, and it was everywhere.
It looked like hail laying on top of the wood box and everywhere else, so I just went over and I touched it, and it wasn't hail. It was a gelatinous-like material.
Now, Dottie had always been healthy. She wasn't exactly someone you'd ever expect to get sick. I'm jealous. However, within hours of touching the blobs, she became violently ill.
I started feeling dizzy. Everything started moving around, and it got worse. And as it did, I became increasingly nauseated.
Roughly an hour after the first symptoms started to appear, Dottie was found sprawled across her bathroom floor, conscious but incredibly weak. Sunny Barclift, Dottie's daughter, recalled that her mother seemed unusually cold, drenched in sweat, and was very pale.
She was cold, drenched with perspiration. My mom had been vomiting. She had extreme vertigo. She complained that she had difficulty with her vision. Her vision was blurring.
Concerned, she had her mother transported to the hospital, where she was admitted for 3 days, eventually being diagnosed with a severe inner ear infection. During Dottie's transfer, Sunny remembered the unusual rainstorm and wondered if it could be linked to her mother's sudden illness.
For some reason, as we were going out the door, I remembered the substance, and I wondered if perhaps it might have had some sort of an effect on her, if it might have made her sick.
Dottie wasn't alone. As the day wore on, more and more people fell ill. Some were bedridden with severe nausea, others struggled to breathe, their lungs tight and swollen. Some felt as if their very bodies were betraying them, as if some invisible force had invaded their systems. David Lacey was among those hit particularly hard.
I was to the point where I could hardly breathe. I started to put it together that, possibly, whatever the substance was, it made me violently sick, like I never had been before, to the point where it just totally shut me down.
What made things worse was that the more people who came into contact with the goo, the more it spread. Everyone, from children to the elderly, was affected in one way or another. This wasn't just a flu. It wasn't just some random outbreak. It was something much more mysterious, something no one could explain. Naturally, rumors began to spread through Oakville like wildfire. In a town as small as this, everyone knew everyone's business, and gossip was as common as the rain. Theories about what was happening ranged from the mundane to the fantastical. Was this a result of a secret military experiment gone wrong? After all, the area around Oakville was home to military bases, and it wasn't beyond the realm of possibility that some sort of covert operation had caused this strange phenomenon. Some even wondered if it might be an alien invasion. What could be more fitting for an alien visitation than gooey, gelatinous rain? It seems that if this were the case, our alien overlords spent just a little too much time watching old school Nickelodeon before reaching out to us Earthlings. Anyway, others, in a more paranoid state, speculated that it was the first wave of a biological weapon, a secret government operation meant to test something on a small, unsuspecting population. Was Oakville being used as an experiment? Was the town a target for something much larger, something we weren't meant to understand? It wasn't long before the word conspiracy started circulating around Oakville like an electric current. Meanwhile, authorities began taking the situation seriously. What was this strange substance that had fallen from the sky? The initial analysis only added to the confusion. Sunny, suspicious that the goo may be the catalyst behind her mom's sudden and violent illness, collected a sample and sent it to the hospital for analysis.
I opted at that moment to take a sample of this gelatinous material to the hospital.
There, a technician discovered that the blobs contained human white blood cells, the very same cells found in our immune system. I guess whoever controls the weather took the song "It's Raining Men" a little too seriously. Anyway, how could human cells possibly rain down from the sky? This was like something out of a nightmare, and yet there it was, right before their eyes. With all of that said, the scientists were fairly quick to downplay their discovery. The cells weren't intact. They weren't fully formed human cells, more like remnants or fragments of something. This just deepened the mystery. The sample was quickly forwarded to the Washington State Department of Health for further investigation. It was there that microbiologist Mike McDowell later examined the sample and found it was swarming with 2 species of bacteria, one of which is typically found in the human digestive tract. So now, not only was something falling from the sky, but it was carrying with it bacteria that seemed eerily familiar. Could this be some sort of strange cosmic event? Or was it simply a bizarre natural occurrence that had no logical explanation? Due to the presence of that species of digestive tract bacteria, many were quick to label the blobs blue ice. For the uninitiated, I'm going to get a little gross. Blue ice is the byproduct of human waste on planes. And that's all the detail you're getting. I won't go further because nobody wants to hear me talk about poop. You're welcome. Anyway, those who subscribe to this theory believe that a plane vacated its blue ice reserve during a flight, blanketing the area it soared over. The issue with this, however, is that the FAA prohibits pilots from dumping blue ice while mid-flight. And, to absolutely nobody's surprise, blue ice is dyed blue. Hence blue ice. I mean, I suppose a rogue pilot could have spat in the face of FAA regulations and dumped their waste over an unsuspecting town. However, given that the blobs were translucent and not blue, I doubt that the blobs were in fact human waste dumped from a plane. As quickly as it had begun, the blobs disappeared. Over the course of several weeks, the strange substance fell over Oakville no less than 6 times. 7 weeks of torment and sickness, and, without warning, it suddenly stopped. The skies cleared, the rain returned to its normal, unremarkable drizzle, and Oakville, once again, became just another quiet town. However, the residents were left to pick up the pieces. Just what had happened? And what were those blobs? No one could say for sure. Nearly a year after Dottie's mysterious illness, she sent a sample she had carefully preserved in her freezer to Amtest Laboratories, a private research facility based in Kirkland. As microbiologist Tim Davis analyzed the sample, he was struck by an unsettling discovery. The blobs contained what appeared to be a eukaryotic cell. These complex, nucleus-containing cells are the building blocks of life itself, found in nearly all living organisms. The implication was chilling. Whatever was in that sample had been alive, or perhaps still was. A strange and rather unsettling theory eventually materialized, lingering in the minds of those who lived through the bizarre events in Oakville. Some have speculated that the mysterious substance was the result of a catastrophic accident during a naval bombing run. According to this theory, a school of jellyfish had been obliterated mid-air, their shattered remains sent hurtling into the atmosphere, where it would eventually rain down on Oakville, a full 50 miles inland. This explanation, while intriguing, raised more questions than answers. The sheer distance the fragments would have to travel, the repeated falls of the strange substance, and the absence of any telltale odor of decay cast doubt in the minds of the town's residents. The US Air Force, while acknowledging that military bombing runs had indeed taken place over the Pacific that summer, flatly denied any knowledge of the substance or their involvement in its dispersal. The people of Oakville were not so easily swayed. In the months leading up to the event, many had noticed a peculiar and nearly constant presence of slow-moving military aircraft, something that heightened their suspicion and raised the hairs on the back of their necks. Could Oakville have been the unwitting site of a dark military experiment? Was this strange phenomenon the result of a biological weapon test, or perhaps a covert trial to gauge the effects of a biological attack on American soil? These questions remain unanswered, and the unsettling suspicion that the government was hiding the truth looms large over the small town. With that said, if it wasn't some sort of biological agent, could it have been something otherworldly? For all the investigations, all the tests, the Oakville Blobs remain a mystery to this day. Whatever the answer is, it's been lost to time, leaving behind only questions and a legacy of one of the most bizarre events in modern history. If you ask me, someone who studied animation, which is kind of like chemistry or biology, I think the military may have had something to do with it. Listen, the US military is no stranger when it comes to experimenting on the country's own citizens, with tests ranging from trivial to downright cruel and insanely unethical. In 1950, the US Navy embarked on a chilling experiment under the guise of national defense. In an operation dubbed Sea Spray, they unleashed vast clouds of Serratia marcescens, a bacterium believed to be innocuous, over the unsuspecting city of San Francisco. The sinister cloud swept through the streets, leaving a deadly mark in its wake. Soon after, residents began falling ill with symptoms resembling pneumonia, their bodies succumbing to an invisible threat. Among them, at least one person would not survive. What was deemed a routine test turned into a tragic reminder of the deadly games played in the name of military strategy, at the expense of innocent lives. Now, I'll admit, I have absolutely no proof that the military was behind the Oakville Blobs. I'm just a guy from Toronto with a microphone and way too much free time. However, given the reports of slow-moving military aircraft in the months leading up to the first storm, combined with the sudden and violent illnesses the town's residents and animals both contracted after coming into contact with the blobs, I think it's kind of possible that the blobs were part of a government experiment designed to test the effects of a gelatinous biological agent, with Oakville being the unlucky and unwilling subject chosen. I get it, it's super conspiratorial, and I agree. I'd show you my tinfoil hat, but it's stuck in transit given the Canada Post strike. To this day, the Oakville Blobs remain unsolved, a strange, gelatinous reminder that not everything in this world can be explained away by mere logic. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and in the case of Oakville, it's a mystery we may never fully understand. With all of that said, what do you think the Oakville Blobs were? Thank you so much for tuning in to today's mystery. If there's a mystery you'd like me to cover, don't hesitate to leave a comment on the video, or send an email to mattsmysterystories@gmail.com. If you like what you saw and are interested in supporting me on my journey, consider subscribing to the channel. I post once a week, and will drop the occasional bonus episode if I have time. It goes without saying, the world is full of mystery, and I hope to share as many of them with you as possible. Until the next one, this is Matt telling you to stay mysterious.